If you guys have been with my channel for any length of time, you will know that I love ink blending. It is probably my favorite technique and I bust it out all the time. Hello, I am Ciara, this is Aqua, and today I'm going to share with you my top 5 tips with a bonus tip on how to improve your ink blending. So if that's of interest to you, stick around. Before we jump into the video, I would love to ask if you'd consider subscribing to the channel. I have new videos every Monday and Thursday, and my goal is to hit 25,000 subscribers, so every new subscriber really counts. Let's jump into the video. My first tip has to do with the texture of the paper that you're using. Here I have a piece of watercolor paper and a piece of my favorite HammerMill smooth cardstock, and you can see the texture. Now, this is not to say that you cannot do ink blending on different textured paper. You absolutely can, but to get a really nice smooth look, you do need it to be an untextured paper, as smooth as possible. I do have the one that I love linked down below if you're at all interested in checking it out, but the texture will come through in your ink blending, as you can see here, just as I'm laying down the color on the watercolor paper. Now again, there's nothing wrong with this, and you can do a lot of fun watercolor techniques with it. However, you will end up with a blend that looks a little bit less cohesive and smooth, obviously, because of the texture. So keep that in mind when you're choosing your cardstock to blend with. Now I'm going to blend on my favorite HammerMill here, you can see that the ink just goes down a lot easier, and you're kind of not fighting the blending tool on the actual tooth of the paper while working on this. So any smooth cardstock that you have in hand can work. And of course, try. I mean, there's never going to be a time where you can't try whatever you're working with. You know, give it a go. If you have cardstock you want to try it and see what happens. Sometimes you can come up with some really cool different things going on in the background, but for me personally, I do prefer a smoother texture to my ink blending, which I get from the paper. For this tip, I'm going to demonstrate the difference between ink blending with a dry ink pad and ink blending with one that you have recently re-inked. So this is the Distress Oxide Spun Sugar. I love this color. I use it very often, and it has not been re-inked in quite a while. Now, that's not to say that I can't use it. So if you didn't own the re-inker and you needed to use a certain color, you can see that I am still getting some coverage down. However, it is a lot more difficult than you'll see once I've inked it here in a second. So I'm going to shake up my re-inker, and I am going to add that on top just to show you how I like to re-ink mine. I did let it sit for probably a good 10 minutes before I went and used it again. I mean, with the editing, you can see me use it right away, but I did let it sit. And this is my kitten Aqua. She had to come and check out what I was up to. I left this clip long so you guys could see her as she kind of wandered through the frame a few times. But you can see here I've covered my whole ink pad, and it's already starting to disappear because I have not re-inked it in quite a while. So I am going to let that sit for, as I said, it took me about 10 minutes, I think I let it sat, before I come and re-ink this once, or sorry, ink the paper once again, so you can see me kind of work with the color. Now I'm going to use Oxides and HammerMill Cardstock throughout this whole video. That's just my preferred, but test any water-soluble inks you have. Give them a go and see what happens. I can't speak to other inks because these are the ones that I own and use all the time, but there's nothing wrong with using your inks and seeing what happens. You know, the worst at a worst, it's a piece of paper, you don't like it, you can die cut it, you can use the other side. There's so many things you could do if you don't enjoy what happened. So just give it a play and see what happens. Now here you can see that I've just taken some ink from the corner, and in one pass, I've fully covered that one area. I don't even need to go over it again. It's so easy once you've re-inked the pad to get that coverage that you're looking for. So if you're struggling to get ink down, try using your re-inker. Most ink pads come with them, or you purchase them separately, but most of them have re-inkers that you can purchase. So if you are struggling with that coverage, try that and see what happens. It probably will make it easier. For this tip, it's kind of a funny one, but I find that it always helps me when I'm blending. And of course, there's not always going to be the chance to do this, but always come in off of the edge of your ink blending panel and work on a smooth surface. So you'll always see in my videos, I work with a glass mat because it easily slides along the edge and I can build up color how I want to slowly from there. So I know that seems like a silly tip, but it does actually work. At least I find this gives me the most control with where my color is going and how I want it to lay. Now I'm going to show you starting on the panel without starting from the edge, and I don't know if you'll be able to tell easily, but when I hold it up, there is more color in that one spot where I started. Now you can probably blend that out if you keep blending over top of it and just getting more saturation of ink, but I just find if you start off the edge when possible, you always end up with a better blend and a smoother look. So keep that in mind if that's something that you're struggling with, and give it a try. Hopefully it'll work for you. Now obviously it won't work in every instance because sometimes you need to blend in a certain area and maybe you can't start off the edge, but I do find that if you can, it always seems to give this really beautiful look and a smooth application of the ink. So I don't know if you can see there, but there is a darker area where my tool touched the paper to start, and there isn't on the other side. This is probably my favorite tip. You're gonna see here two different foams. One is a flat foam and one is a domed foam. I will always swear by the domed foam. And the reason for this is that I find you get way better control and way better ink application from it. Now I have two fresh foams. Neither of them have ever been added to this ink, so that you can see here exactly what's gonna happen right out of the ink. I find with the flat foams, you end up with more of a circular shape on your paper, and especially if you have to start on the page somewhere. Like you can see that I obviously am going to start off the page because that is my preference, but if you start on the page, you get this kind of harsh circle mark and you have to then work hard to get it out, and I don't like that. I find that that makes it a lot more difficult, especially if you're new to ink blending. You know, I'm an experienced ink blender. I ink blend all the time. This is one of my favorite mediums, and I struggle to get a smooth blend when I use a flat foam because it just touches the paper in like the whole circle, and then you have to fight to blend out that circle that is laying down. Whereas here with the dome foam, you can kind of see that I can taper it out a little bit, giving me, a bit of a lighter edge on the inside and then a darker edge on the outside, and I can build from there. So that is why I greatly prefer the domed foams. Now you can try the flat foams, there's nothing wrong with that, but I just find that the dome foams just give you a lot better coverage and a way smoother blend. Now we're going to put all of the tips together, and I'm going to show you how using a light application does make blending easier. I'm going to do this whole panel in these two colors. I've picked raspberry and seedless preserves, and I'm going to start light on one edge, kind of blend through to the center, and then blend in with the second color. The reason I do this is because it gives me a smooth blend between multiple colors. I find it is the easiest way to get a beautiful look, but you'll see that I use all of the tips here. I have my domed foam, that is my preference. I'm going to start from off of the edge, and I have a smooth cardstock to work with. So these are all of the tips kind of coming together, and it would be really easy to turn this panel into a card. Add some really cool white elements on top of it. Say, cut a couple of white leaves and add a sentiment. And there you would have just a really pretty blended panel that was fairly simple. And you could test out these tips that I'm giving you if that's at all interesting to you. So try it out, see what you think, and slowly build up your color. You can always add more ink, but you cannot take it away. Well, you can with a little bit of water, with oxides anyway, but you don't remove the color necessarily. You would just flip the page over if you were unimpressed with your blend and start from scratch. But I think that if you use these tips, hopefully they'll help your ink blending and you'll see results that you really love. Now, of course, you will have to practice and play a little bit, but hopefully that's exciting to you, because I hope creating and crafting is something that you're enjoying doing, and that just gives you a chance to play with products that you've purchased. Regardless, if you don't have water-based inks, try the inks that you own and see what they do when you blend them. Worst out of worst, you flip the page over and you start again, or die cut it into smaller elements and see what you think. You could die cut a large panel into smaller things like little stars or little circles and use them as embellishments on other cards. There's so many things you can do if you don't like a background. Try adding some paste on top of it and see if that helps through a stencil. There's so many things. I promise that even the least appealing blended panel can be beautiful if you just add a little bit of something extra to it. And if you're really frustrated, walk away. Give it a break, get a tea or a coffee or a beverage of some kind, and come back later when you're feeling more interested in actually creating, and just give it another look and see if you like it. Because I have had times where I've walked away from cards that I wasn't impressed by, and I look at them with new eyes the next day or later that day, and I can see that it is pretty, and I just need to add a little bit to it to make it a little more appealing to me. So hopefully these tips have been helpful to you guys. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and we'll jump on to my bonus tip next. Hopefully those 5 tips were really helpful. I think that they will improve your ink blending if you give them a chance. But my 6th tip is also be kind to yourself as you're learning something new. I find as adults it's hard to be comfortable wanting to learn something new, and because of that, we tend to be a little less kind, especially to ourselves. So give yourself the same patience and grace you would give a loved one if they were trying something new and were a beginner at something. So make sure you give all those tips a try, and let me know if you had a favorite. Let me know what you thought of this video. This is my first video like this, so if you have any tips or ideas for me, let me know on how I could improve the tips videos. And if you guys would like to see a different tips video from me, please let me know what that would be, and I would be happy to share any other tips and tricks I have for my favorite techniques. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today, and Aqua, and I will see you guys again very soon for my next video.